Hey guys, just before we start the video, if you guys haven't seen the gameplay footage, it is 12 minutes. It is 12 minutes. The description will be down below for the official video. But just to get back on track, the game is in pre-alpha, so we have to be kind of aware of where they are in terms of development. Can't be too critical, but doesn't exactly exempt it from criticism. Let's just try to give some constructive feedback to maybe the developers if they are listening. I'm sure the footage was released just to get a little bit of feedback from longtime fans or even just general players that have never seen the game. Maybe they wanted to take a new artistic direction or even game engine wise and just see how everybody reacts to it, right? But just starting off, I don't actually mind the art direction that they went for. I would personally like it if it was closer to number 1 and 2. A lot more brighter and shiny in terms of colors and sharper tones, right? Because like the approach that they went for here looks very soft. I'm not sure how to get the right term, but like it looks very soft and very dark. We shouldn't compare the other two so much, but we can't help do it, right? Given that the fact that the game is in pre-alpha stage, I'm really impressed just from the overall ambient environment. It actually looks well detailed, given the state that they're in. The little details here and there, the moss, the corruption, the debris, the cracks on the wall, right? Even when the character is just walking through an area and you see the lighting just reflecting off, even like on her body and things like that. Small little things, right? It just seems subtle, it seems nice. Her hair doesn't seem too bad, but honestly, I think it could still use some work. I think it's kind of stuck between the certain characters in other video games have one big clump of hair that doesn't really rotate or move with the physics, right? And then there's ones where it's like completely detailed and rotate with you as you rotate. But since Fury is a magician, that might be something to consider because her hair might have a lot of like, let's say, lively energy to it, like it's its own sentient being, right? Like Doctor Strange's cape. It just moves on its own kind of thing. It doesn't exactly be manipulated by rotations, motion, physics, wind. Because like when you look at the player rotate Fury around, sometimes the hair seems really stiff. During the attack animations, it seems kind of okay, but when they're making sharp turns sometimes during the video, it seems like the hair that could sort of trail behind doesn't really turn and bend. It just seems like it just stiffly moves around. Some things like that, right? Just small little touches, but it's really nothing like too essential. But if you are looking at the character the entire time, I think that's one thing I would like to see a little bit worked on. The number one biggest thing for me was the camera. Certain camera angles I thought were just a little bit awkward for me. The rotation of the camera felt very heavy in relation to the character rotations as well. Like it seemed very magnetic. It seems like there's less freedom with the camera angle and the character, and they're kind of just bundled up all together, especially in combat. Because when you look at the combat, whenever the character is locking on, you're always looking at Fury from the back. You're never looking at them from the side, right? You're never seeing her front. You're never seeing how long the whips are. 99% of the times, when locked on, it's from the back, like a Souls game. My main reason for pointing this out is that I really like the camera angles in numbers 1 and 2. A lot of it were ambitiously wide or close up, depending on your relationship with the enemy, or distance relation to the enemy, right? When you go close in for a combo and launcher and things like that, sometimes the camera zooms in. When you send the enemy flying, it zooms out. It can stay on the side, it can stay a little bit above or even below. The camera angles weren't always from the back. It had like a Legend of Zelda feel to it, the previous games. And then with this one though, it seems just a little bit boring because you got all this potential to showcase wide, flashy moves and just measure the distance with like other potential equipment, gadgets, and things like that, and see the overall scale of the battle. It seems too close up given the fact that the character uses a long-range whip. There's so much potential to just widen up the area and then just showcase the entire thing, do some more action-packed, orientated camera rotations and angles. But if the approach that the developers are going for are more subtle approach, like a Souls game, that's completely fine too. But I would prefer them doing something closer to number 1 and 2 in Legend of Zelda than try to find something that's kind of like a Souls game. Because I play a Souls game because it's a Souls game. I don't want to play Darksiders 3 because it's like a Souls game. You know what I mean? And combat just seems closer to a Souls game than a Darksiders game, which is how the camera constantly rotates so that the camera is always behind the character and the enemy is always in front of the character. Like in terms of background to foreground, it's always enemy, character, camera. And if the camera angle stays that way for all the fights in the entire game, I think it's just gonna get boring really quickly, given the amount of cool environments that they have. And just going back to sort of the magnetic feel, like the character seems very locked in, right? The character seems very stiff when rotating too, right? And like I said, it is pre-alpha, but still, this is just one of my feedbacks. It's like, it reminded me of playing like an MMORPG where, you know, you're holding forward, you're holding W on the keyboard, and like, oh shit, I want to turn around. What's the fastest way to do that? You know, you hold right click on the mouse and then you just turn them over. The character is really stiff with the camera angle, and then they just move. You don't really see like the physics and the motion of the character animations rotating their body, right, as they sort of lean the other way and sort of turn. It's just kind of like that stiff thing. Like, in terms of combat, like, the only thing that I really wanted was a little bit more flair to the whip. Not so much the sound effect, because sound effect for whips is really hard to do. You're essentially getting that small tip and smacking it on a very small point of contact on the enemy. It's not gonna be like some fucking nuclear blast on every hit kind of thing, right? Sound effect or visually. Even with some of the animations that they have now, you know, the enemies bleed a little bit. When you get hit, you bleed a little bit. The blood is very subtle. Because in the underground level, it kind of blends in with the background a little bit too much in my opinion, and I don't know how I feel about that. Because if you have other flashy moves, right, it can kind of compensate sort of the dark and meek tone that the game just environmentally naturally has. Fury doesn't do anything with her left hand. I'm pretty sure all her attacks are on the right, but like the left hand could probably be for spells, equipment, other things. So like, for example, what if she could somehow buff her whip and it was like some fire whip or something, right? Visually up the scales in terms of flair and animation, have it light up the environment, cast some really dynamic shadows and contrast here and there, attacking the enemies and things like that, instead of just like that light like slapping noise. One last thing I wanted to mention was just the final fight at the very end, the boss fight. Assuming it is a boss, because, you know, they were talking about the 7 deadly sins in the teaser, right? And this is Sloth, one of the sins. Let's just assume that it's like the very first boss in the game, and then you have to hunt down the other 6, which are going to be much harder. Honestly, the first boss seemed kind of a little bit underwhelming, but if it is like the introduction boss, it'll probably be easy just for the casual players and whatnot, right? But the main reason that it felt so underwhelming for me was that because of the fixed camera angle, making everything look like a little bit of a Souls game, it reminded me a lot of the Asylum Demon. Just in terms of aesthetic, mechanics, just pretty much everything, you know, it's just a big floaty fat dude with like a stick thing. Floats up, pounds down on the ground, slow, right? I mean, this guy's a big tail, but still, right? And then you just constantly go behind him and like whip, 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 whip. I understand completely if it is a first boss, but still. In Darksiders 1 and 2, even when you're locking onto the enemy, you have sort of like that white screen, even wider white screen of an aspect ratio when you're targeting, kind of like a Legend of Zelda style, and it was really fun because the camera wasn't fixed with you constantly looking behind the character. It was rotating around with the enemy, and it matched it well nicely given the spacing that you had, like limited spacing. You were never clumped up in terms of camera angle. But everything right now, the combat just seems very tight. It seems too close up for me personally, and just the natural characteristics of Fury using the whip. I would honestly like to see some long range moves, even like some gigantic spin attack kind of thing, from a wider angle. But other than that, pre-alpha stage, let me know what you guys think. You know, we haven't seen all the features of the combat, right? Even outside of combat, the platforming, the full potential, spells, other mechanics, equipment. Enemies might take a whole new rework, boss might take a whole new rework, right? Sound effects. A lot of things to consider because it is pre-alpha stage. And it looks pretty good for a pre-alpha stage. It looks like a playable, like, closed beta demo, honestly. But that doesn't mean we're not allowed to provide some constructive feedback, right? I'm trying my best here because I love the Darksiders series. I would like it if it went closer to its roots, but if this is the direction that they went for, I'll try to keep an open mind about it, honestly, and I hope that everybody does too. Let's have some faith, guys. There's still a lot of time till 2018, and we don't even know when of 2018. At least, I don't know when of 2018. I don't think they announced it. So if they said January 2018, right? We're still in May. That's a lot of time till January. There's a lot of time to change camera angles. Maybe not the whole skeleton and bones of the game, like the core structure and the engine, but small little things here and there. Links will be in the description box for the gameplay footage, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoyed my video too. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all next time.